Hello, everyone. I'm Rina Newton from Code Clarity, and welcome to another video as part of Vidori's Compliance Hot Topic series. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Lucy Rose from the USA. Lucy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Rena. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. My name is Lucy. I have a consulting business called Lucy Rose and Associates, and I work with a number of pharma companies and actually biologic companies, life science companies, I guess I should say, in terms of helping them kind of navigate the whole concept of advertising and promotion of prescription drugs and biologics. I do have a background that kind of is unique and lends itself to doing this, which is, I think, fun for you and me as we have this discussion. I used to run the group at FDA, at that point called DDMAC, now called OPDP, that regulates all the advertising and promotion of prescription drugs in the US. So we'll have fun, I think, comparing and contrasting what goes on in the UK.
Fun isn't it? Fun isn't a word that normally gets applied to our line of work. I assume you and I are probably the outliers there, but so we experience, I would say, the premise of our discussion is to talk about what are the differences and the similarities between the US and predominantly the UK, but also some other European countries. And I can say, hand on heart, Lucy, we experience when it comes to MLR or copy approval, a huge degree of frustration, whether that's approval efficiency or whether that's, something else. But I don't know whether that's a phenomenon in the US, is it?
Oh my, is it? I've actually been doing this now, Rena, for nigh on 25 years. And I'm a physician assistant in this country, and I used to work for industry as well in sales and marketing. So I kind of have an interesting view, I think, of looking at this. But I'll tell you, the number one thing I hear in all of my consulting work is exactly what you just said. I review this broken list, figure out how to fix it. And what I've observed, now I look forward to hearing what you've observed also in the UK and the EU as you do your work. But for me, it's all about kind of the human piece here. It is ensuring that what comes in is actually consistent with the labeling in the first place. And secondly, that the quality is good enough to kind of at least pass the red face test as it comes in. And thirdly, that it's submitted on time so that folks have the timeliness to do it. And I find if in fact marketing and the agencies hold themselves accountable enough to do those three, the process is usually quite expeditious and takes away that vicious cycling.
How about you? Yeah, I mean, there's a great top tips, and even in the UK, we'd probably say that those are all very similar for us as well. I mean, there's sort of check the quality before it goes into the system. It's almost like everybody knows it, but sometimes it still doesn't happen. What would be your kind of solution there? Have you tried and tested anything to get people to actually check quality first?
Yeah, actually, there are some ways to do that. Clearly, some of the companies with whom I work have concept reviews as well, where if there's a major change or a whole new claim that might require different evidence to support it and things like that, they actually bring it in as a concept before they even do the testing on that concept. Make sure that all the people at the table, and in the US, there are a number of different disciplines and players that are involved in this, that everybody's in agreement that if we can get the details right, that the content will be a good one. So that's certainly one way. And another way, I think, is for marketers to really step up and own that piece so that they review it before it comes in and that they hold their agencies accountable for that constant learning and applying what they learn as they go.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think there's in the UK, the person who's accountable for approval is called a signatory. And as a signatory, sometimes I don't want to feel like a job bag monkey. It's actually quite nice to be invited along to concept review because it's a sign of respect as well, isn't it? That we have an equal voice at an early stage, which should be considered so that we're not the ones at the end who have to be the bad guys and say, no, actually, that's not going to wash. Now I have to reject it or block it or something. Nobody wants to be that unpopular approver, right?
The other thing, Rena, is that all of us, I think, are accountable for return on investment and for the company doing well. All with the patient in mind and what's important for the patient, but also, the business aspects of all of this. So to the extent that we get the vicious cycling and that you're not brought in until the end, and then you have to say no, there's a lot of money, a lot of time that's also down the drain that might have been prevented if, in fact, everybody's at the table early on.
Yeah, it's true, because when we train signatories, we always say to them, try never to say no, because it forces you to be constructive. But of course, you can only be constructive if you've been given that opportunity. Is there
Right.
anything similar in the States with respect, obviously we have a self-regulation system and it's, based on a code. The code is based on the law. Very different in the States, but we have this signatory as the mandatory person. So in the MLR, only M is mandatory for signing materials off. What do you guys have?
Yeah, it's different here.
Mm,
And M, of course, just for clarity's sake, means medical, if anybody happens to be watching that doesn't know that. So it would be
thank you.
somebody that is responsible in your medical discipline team. In the US, the way it's done, it's similar in some respects, but it's always, I can't say always, nothing is always, is it ever?
Mhm.
Not 100% anything. We wouldn't be good ad promo people if we even implied that. But usually in most companies here, it's a team of disciplines. So you have regulatory at the table, medical at the table, and legal in many companies most of the time. Statisticians are also brought in often to help us take a look at the data to ensure we're comfortable that it is of good enough quality to support it. But at the end of the day, the way our teams work is it's not one person who just gets the final say. We work for consensus across those disciplines because all of them have a role to play in terms of the risk for the company, literally, and looking at it through different eyes and different filters. And so in general, we try to reach consensus. And if that can't be reached, then often it's escalated to a different level where different set of looking at it from a company perspective with the assumption that if it can't be approved at that initial level comfortably, how many people at higher level need to know the risk that's being assumed?
Oh, and does that happen often where it's escalated to a higher level?
Certainly you hope not, because hopefully what comes is that good enough quality and consistent with labeling and stuff that folks can agree.
Yeah.
Does happen. It does at some times reach a point where folks can't reach agreement. I don't know a percentage, and I think that varies from company.
No, but you get a gut feel for things. But certainly, we would hope that nothing needed to be escalated, to a higher level, because sometimes the higher you go, the less hands-on people tend to be with the campaigns and the claims and the data. And actually, you start introducing risk at this stage now.
To some degree, but on the other hand, what we know, at least in the States, and I can't speak obviously for the UK, but here there's a doctrine called the Park Doctrine that is a law that basically says just because you're higher and you're more hands off does not mean you're not still accountable. And you are accountable for the final product that goes out all the way up to the CEO or the head of that organization in this country. And so are situations, perhaps, if these three highly trained professionals are looking at it and can't agree, where perhaps the timing might be right for that next level to be aware of the potential risk those folks think we might be assuming if we go out with it. And so it would
understood.
At a higher level of potential risk, I think. Again, it doesn't happen often. And the goal is, of course, that it's consistent enough. It doesn't have to happen.
Yeah. Perfect. And I think actually, although we've already discussed there a few similarities and a few differences, it would be good maybe to give the audience your top tips with respect to achieving what I can only describe as the holy grail of efficient approval, pain-free approval. What might you say you have actually seen and implemented in companies that works?
I wish I could say any would be totally pain-free, right? As we're all thinking and as we're being creative, there's always going to be.
You have to aim high though, Lucy.
Aim high, buddy. I got that. But I think I've already given most of them, and I'll just kind of put them together one more time. Cool. And I think it's really important if one is coming out with a new concept that you take the time appropriately at the beginning to do what's called a concept review. And it sounds like both your group and mine. It is. And then secondly, that whatever and I'm going to always think strategy, because strategy is up here and then the tactics are what we see at the level we're. If the strategy itself is aligned with our approved labeling, then in fact, more than likely, the claims will also be as we do the tactics. So I'm going to start up high first and say, first things first, the strategy needs to be aligned with our approved labeling. If it is, then the tactics are likely to be too. So secondly, then, assuming that, then what comes in needs to be quality and consistent with the labeling if you want to make it as pain-free as possible. Doesn't mean you can't push some, but somewhere in that neighborhood, okay? And then that all the professionals be highly trained and that they also come to the table totally prepared. And then lastly, that marketing and the agencies take accountability for ensuring that their learnings get applied to all the subsequent kinds of tactics that are put out there.
Perfect. I mean, great top tips. I think something that even the UK people who are watching and listening can sort of look at how can we work better with our US teams, who a lot of our global colleagues will be based in the US. And I love the way that you put it down as a kind of start high and then work your way down. It makes perfect common sense, really. Thank you so much for your time, Lucy. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Oh, I've loved it. Thank you for having me.
See you soon. Take care.